I love the color of the shirt, but it makes the graphic hard to see. It's one of my favorite Rancid albums. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I told you before during my video about my musical journey in life that I started listening to heavy metal music when I was a teenager. Well, I wasn't actually allowed to listen to heavy metal. No, I grew up in one of those households that believed heavy metal music was of the devil. Now, my family wasn't overly religious, something I told you in another video. It was my mother's abusive boyfriend, we'll call him Bill, who was actually the instigator of the heavy metal ban. Bill wasn't a regular churchgoer. I'm not really sure what he believed, but he apparently believed in Christianity enough to believe that heavy metal music would turn me into an evil person. Heavy metal music somehow invoked the devil and would turn me into some Satan-worshipping killer. When I was in my early teens, he caught me drawing a skull. It was something in the vein of the artwork that Metallica commonly used by an artist called Pusshead. I was literally just copying the art that I thought was cool, and at no point was I thinking about the devil or killing anybody. Bill believed otherwise and made sure that I was very aware that he had spent time in Vietnam, and if the Viet Cong weren't able to kill him, he surely wasn't going to let me. That was Bill's big tough guy move, to bring up the fact that he was in the Vietnam War. But though he was in the Navy at the time, I don't know that he actually saw any combat. I always find it suspicious when war veterans bring up being in the war a lot, as most people who have actually been involved in combat usually don't want to talk about it. It seemed he wore it like a badge of honor, which has led me to believe later in life that he didn't really actually see much combat, if any. Looking back as an adult, I also realized that he was actually on the small side, which is likely why he boasted about war and abused women and children. He couldn't handle another grown man. Something that became clear as I got older and grew to be bigger than him. As he slowly realized that I could actually hurt him as much, if not more, than he could hurt me, he became less and less abusive to me. I was still only 15 by the time he had left, but he had spent quite a few years reminding me on the regular that he could kill me if I did anything that he thought was a threat to him. Because of that, I never tried to hurt him, and he eventually left. If he had stayed longer, something might have happened, as by the time I was 16, 17 years old, the fear from his threats was wearing off and I was definitely having thoughts of revenge. So when I was in my early teens, I listened to heavy metal music secretly. My friends would give me cassette tapes and I would hide them under the bottom shelf of a built-in shelf in my bedroom. I was pretty well left alone when I was in my bedroom. It was one of the places that I could be that Bill didn't regularly come into. He bullied me and my sister when we were hanging out in the house, but usually if we were in our bedrooms, we were fairly safe. I had a cassette player that I would use to listen to the tapes my friends gave me quietly. It was those bands that made me want to start playing music. My mother had an old acoustic guitar in the basement, and I brought it up to my bedroom and tried to learn how to play the more melodic parts of Metallica songs. Ironically, a friend of mine whose family was religious owned an electric guitar and was allowed to listen to whatever he wanted. So when I was at his house, we could blast Slayer and play his guitar. At no point while listening to any heavy metal music did I ever have any thoughts of harming anyone else. The thing that makes me roll my eyes now is that I wasn't having any thoughts of hurting anyone despite listening to heavy metal music. But Bill, the one who believed heavy metal music was going to make me evil, was mentally and physically abusing me, my sister, and my mother. He was the one who believed in God, yet he was the one who was evil. Once, he got mad at my sister and grabbed her arm, twisting it up behind her back. She was screaming in pain and was afraid he was going to break her arm. I ran toward him and yelled at him to stop, but he raised his hand at me, so I backed off. Instead, I ran upstairs and dialed 911. When the police arrived, they didn't do anything. It was common back then, and still is to an extent, but definitely back then, for police to just shrug off these types of calls as family issues. As soon as the police left, Bill looked at me and said, quote, "If you ever call the cops on me again, I'll make sure you need to be hospitalized by the time they get here." I was 10. This man was claiming that heavy metal music was going to make me evil? Wow. Bill was the type of guy who would find vulnerable women, get them to marry him, and then either live off what they had or divorce them and take half their money. When he met my mother, she had just divorced my father, who ran his own successful business at the time. She left the marriage with a sizable chunk of money, which made her able to put a down payment on a house. Bill knew that he could hitch his wagon to that gravy train and be okay, but he always tried to get my mother to marry him. That way, he was guaranteed money if it didn't work out. If they were married, even though my mother paid the down payment, she would still owe him half of the equity in the house if they divorced. Fortunately, despite my mother not having made a lot of great decisions throughout her life, she never would agree to marry him. By the time I was 15, he was realizing that his plan wasn't working, along with the fact that I was starting to realize that I didn't have to take his shit anymore, and he finally cut his losses and took off. Unsurprisingly, he ended up finding another woman whose husband had recently died and was able to hop onto that gravy train. Of course, that wasn't before he became born again and devoted his life to Christianity, which was absolute, complete, and utter bullshit. He didn't give a shit about the church, he just used it as a place to find another vulnerable, entirely too trusting woman. He was not known to be a good guy. He was abusive and slept around. If he became born again, he could revamp his reputation and get in the good graces of the church women. And it worked. He eventually married the woman he met and lived the rest of his life as a fraud. The funny thing is that karma seems to have noticed him, because he eventually got lung cancer which metastasized into other parts of his body, and he died earlier this year after a long, slow, painful fight with cancer. My mother eventually met my stepdad, who was one of the greatest guys I've ever met. He treated me and my sister like his own kids from the minute he met us, and he treated my mother like a queen. When he left us, he passed away quietly in his sleep. It was unexpected, but he had not spent time beforehand fighting illness or being in pain. It's almost as if the universe punished Bill for the life he led as the tormentor of women and children and let my stepdad die peacefully in his sleep for being a good man. I don't know what is real in this world, but at least that scenario gives me a little satisfaction. So by all means, listen to heavy metal music. Let your kids listen to heavy metal music. It's not going to make them do anything they wouldn't already do without it. Sadly, the only thing that ever made me think about harming Bill was his own actions, not whatever music I was listening to. Thanks so much for coming to my channel. If you guys have any questions about me personally or about my upcoming move to the Netherlands, leave them in the comments. If you like these videos, hit subscribe and you can continue on this journey with me. Thanks so much, and be safe.